There actually may not have been a more impossible player in this year's draft class than Carson Schwesinger. This guy was taken with the first pick in the second round of the 2025 NFL Draft, and he is going to be a Cleveland Brown. Going back in time though, this guy did not have a recruiting profile, was a walk-on when he arrived at UCLA, and has been doubted his entire life. Now, he could be the future face of the Cleveland Browns defense, became a first-team All-American at UCLA, and again, was the first pick in the second round. So how did Schwesinger get to this point? Well, we're going to go back in time and tell his unique and incredible story, talk about his great career at UCLA, and the initial reaction to him on the Cleveland Browns. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Carson Schwesinger. In order to understand how he got to this point, we first need to go back in time, as there was a time where Schwesinger had 0 stars, no scholarship offers, and pretty much no hope in the sport of football. Both him and his brothers would goof around with the football in the backyard, and apparently came up with crazy creative games while they were bouncing on the trampoline. This was all happening while they were growing up in Moore Park, California. But as one of the younger ones, Carson really wanted to take football more seriously, and with his older brother already enrolled in a flag football league, Carson wanted in on it. The problem was the age requirement was 6 years old, and Carson was only 5. At least that's what it said on his birth certificate. At the time, he was coached by his father Dennis, who told people Carson was 6 years old instead of 5, so he could qualify for the minimum age requirement and play in the same flag football league as his brother. He also wanted to coach them together, and he said, quote, with a laugh, "I don't know if it was okay to say or not, but we weren't altering his birth certificate to make him younger, we were making him older." Carson continued to play alongside older kids, and eventually when he progressed to tackle football, no one ever questioned his size or toughness. As he moved from linebacker to defensive end to guard to running back and even to safety, he always thought about how his dad told him he could make it. Even as he progressed as a tackle, he continued to compete against older kids, losing only 1 game throughout his childhood under his father's coaching. Eventually, he would arrive at Oaks Christian High School, which is a very small school, and he played both receiver and safety for them. His rise was rooted in what his dad always told him, as he said, quote, "It doesn't matter how good you think you are, you've got to make sure that everybody else thinks you're that good to where they have to put you in." Those are words to live by for Schwesinger, and by the time he did arrive at Oaks Christian, it was almost impossible to keep him off the field. As I said, he played both ways as a safety and a slot receiver, and he also tended to play hurt. His head coach had to keep a watchful eye because sometimes Carson would try to hide an injury. When he wasn't practicing or playing, he could often be found in a film session. His dad said, quote, "He's what I call a football junkie. He loves ball, not just football, but he loves the actual part of the scheme, so that comes from film study and understanding scheme and anticipation. Being on the other side of the ball, he has a unique advantage because he understands splits, spacing, and down and distance, and just those type of things, which takes him to the play." While Carson was one of the best players on his team, there was some bad timing which would limit his college opportunities. His senior year would come during the dreaded 2020 season, and college coaches were not exactly flocking to campus, and he wasn't getting a ton of calls. When it came time to apply for colleges, he had no Division I offers, but he would pick UCLA as his top choice. Not only was Westwood's campus close to home, but also offered both a top-tier bioengineering program and a chance for him to compete at the Division I football level. He said, quote, "UCLA was the university I had always aspired to attend growing up. It provided the best opportunities in both my academic and athletic pursuits." So yeah, he technically picked UCLA, but it wasn't really for football, or I mean it kinda was. At the time, his high school coach actually pitched to Chip Kelly to take Schwesinger as a consolation prize. They lost out on a teammate of his by the name of Ethan Calvert, who decided to commit to Utah, and his coach said, quote, "I went up to Coach Kelly and said, you might want to consider this Carson Schwesinger kid as a walk-on. He's a poor man's Ethan Calvert." And what I mean by that was, he didn't have all the hype, but he was a football junkie, and he had a passion for the game. Sure enough, it ended up happening that Chip brought him into UCLA, and right away they saw exactly what he was talking about. But as I said, there was a catch to all this, as he'd have to walk on without a scholarship, and he was committed to proving himself. He elected to stay at UCLA and be a walk-on, instead of going across the country to a school like Bucknell, which apparently he had an offer to, or at least I think he did. He was not ranked on 24/7 Sports, but how would he end up doing at UCLA? Well, let's take a look. So when Carson arrived at UCLA, he ended up getting the attention of BROWNS special teams coordinator and a couple of their other coaches at practice, and was given an opportunity to try out on the scout team for special teams. I mean, this guy started at the bottom of Power 5 football. After his first couple of practices at UCLA, the linebacker ended up calling his mother with a major announcement. He told her he wasn't on scholarship, it was even bigger. It was that he wanted to go off to the NFL. Okay, so at this point, there aren't many linebackers who get drafted. You usually have to be extremely talented. 3, you have to be an insane athlete. And 4, you kind of have to be a big-time recruit, or at least a scholarship player. The odds that Carson Schwesinger would ever make it to the NFL were pretty much at 0, but this guy literally didn't care. He did not disappoint, as he played in practice as if it was a real game and made the most of every opportunity he got. As a member of the scout team for special teams, he just kept making plays. His coach said, quote, he was blocking kicks in practice, and we were kind of like, what is he doing on the other side? I should bring him on my side instead of embarrassing my special team. After never playing as a freshman, Schwesinger dazzled enough in practice to earn a promotion before his redshirt freshman season back in 2022. Near the end of the fall training camp, he was one of 6 players that Chip Kelly called to the front of the team before making an announcement. In addition to the excitement he felt, he also realized the importance of doubling down on his determination. You can probably put 2 and 2 together, he was given a scholarship. He said, quote, when it's a goal that you've worked for and it finally gets there, you feel a sense of accomplishment, but I also wanted to keep going. So he appeared in every single game in 2022, and he was a reserve linebacker and on special teams. In total in 2022, he would have 15 tackles. 4 of them ended up coming against Stanford, and then he also had 3 against Alabama State. Schwesinger was a little bit closer to his NFL goal, but he now had to really prove it in his next couple of years. 2023 honestly wouldn't be that much better, as he'd only appear in 4 games, but would have his first career sack against Stanford. But what was also super impressive about Schwesinger was that he was also an insane engineer. Not exactly an easy program or course load, and his coach said, quote, it's very impressive that Carson is able to balance his huge football commitment with rigorous bioengineering courses. I believe it's a testament to this kid's hard work ethic. Maybe he wasn't breaking the world in 2023, but Schwesinger was doing something insanely cool. But finally, after waiting his turn and putting in all that work, 2024 he would catch his big break. I mean, this dude came out of nowhere. He was not on any preseason award list, he was not on a single mock draft, and he was probably barely on the 2 deep for UCLA. But in Game 3 against LSU, he blew up. He ended up having 12 tackles on the road against a ranked LSU team, and all of a sudden, he was inserted into the starting lineup, where for the remainder of the season, he went crazy. Against number 8 Oregon, he had 13 tackles. Against number 7 Penn State, he had 15 tackles. He had 2 sacks and 13 tackles against Minnesota, 10 tackles against Rutgers, 13 tackles and a sack against Nebraska, 7 tackles against Iowa, 17 against Washington, 12 against USC, and in the final game of his college career, he'd end up having 15 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 pass deflection against Fresno State. Also, he had 1 game against Iowa in which he literally had 2 interceptions. That's very difficult to do, and this guy was an All-American. He ended up finishing with 136 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections. He ended up leading the Big Ten in tackles, and his 90 solo tackles were the most by a Big Ten player in more than 2 decades, leaving his coaches in awe. What was also cool was his nickname was Captain America on the team, and nobody thought this humble, hardworking kid was ever really going to make it, but everyone respected him, but all of a sudden, it happened. He would turn his final season at UCLA into an All-American level season, as he played in 38 total games during his career, but only 10 of those as a starter. He's also a finalist for the Butkus Award, which goes to the nation's top linebacker. Fueled by insane instincts, explosive athleticism, and a relentless motor, he ended up having that breakout season, as I said, and this erased the doubts about his path to the pros. This guy was going to go off to the NFL. I guess people didn't know how high he would go, though. Built on versatility and intelligence rather than sheer measurables, he was basically seen as a super intelligent quarterback of the defense who could recognize plays, slip through traffic, and go from sideline to sideline. As I said, he led all Power 4 defenders in tackles per game and became the first UCLA player to record 100 tackles in a season since 2018. The 6'2" walk-on made something of himself, and while UCLA went 5-7 without a bowl game, Schwesinger was okay with it. He was now going to go off to the league. It seems that he knew what the offense was going to do before the snap even happened, and it's because he did. His ability to diagnose pre-snap movement and tendencies helped him know exactly where to go to make the play. Having previously played receiver, running back, offensive line, defensive line, and safety meant he knew what everyone else on the field was trying to do. He said, quote, "I played a lot of running back in youth ball, so you kind of just end up getting a feel for where backs are going to go." So yeah, he was invited to the combine and was supposed to be a day 2 pick, but nobody really expected him to be the number 1 overall pick in the second round. That's what would end up happening, as the Cleveland Browns would take him at pick number 33. His coach said, quote, "When you look at Carson's story, it's not where you start, but it's where you finish. You know, you don't have to be a 5-star, you don't have to be that guy that's in lights, and hard work, it does pay off, and character pays off even more. So I think he's a testament to hard work, faith, determination, and character." He ends up walking into a Browns organization where the linebacking core is one of the more uncertain groups on the roster, and many thought it was somewhat of a bad pick because they needed some offensive weapons. But there's a lot of uncertainty facing their star player, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who ended up having that terrible neck injury last season. We don't know if he's going to be back, and if he is, they have a dynamite duo, and if he's not, Schwesinger will be asked to do a lot early on. Carson said he used to look up to Luke Kuechly, but now he's trying to get mentored by Jeremiah Owusu. He said, quote, "I think he's definitely one of the ones that you want to emulate after, and me specifically coming into the system, I plan to pick his brain a lot and learn from him." Cleveland got a guy who has an incredible story, as he truly has one of those football stories from walk-on to second-round pick. I'm definitely not going to be betting against him, and the Browns need a guy like this, and I'm super excited to see what he's going to do. But what do you guys think? If you're a UCLA or a Browns fan, what do you think of Carson Schwesinger? How do you think he'll do this upcoming season? And what other rookie should I take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.